Hi, I'm Ernie Conover. This month, I give you directions to make a croquet set. Making the mallets, the starting and ending stakes, the pins to mark the boundary, that's all straight spindle turning. Turning balls, however, is a bit more complicated. And in this little video, I'd like to show you how to make 6 perfect wooden spheres. Traditionally, balls were made out of boxwood, and that's what I chose for mine. However, oak will work just as well. You need to glue up, if necessary, a piece big enough to turn a 3 5/8 inch cylinder, and then you use a parting tool to part it off at a little greater than 3 5/8, maybe 3 3/4. And from each of these blanks will turn a perfect ball. We're going to turn the ball today with the aid of the Carter Products Perfect Steer tool. It's an ingenious device that you mount on the bed of your lathe, and it has a cutter head here that we can rotate to form a perfect sphere. Setup of this tool is critical. The first thing you have to do is take this base and with a square bring it so the center of this pivot point is directly under the center of our lathe, and that this is square to the gap of the lathe. Once it's square, you then have to bring this arm dead square, and I do that with this block of wood with a rabbet in it that I've cut, and this allows me to put a square right here and bring this up so that it's 90 degrees to the center of rotation. I've also adjusted this tool so that this little cutter is presented exactly on what's called the center line of the lathe. That's an imaginary plane that runs through the center line, and no matter where this cutter is, it's on that plane. I have now jam chucked our blank in the lathe, and I've measured the radius of this ball and set that off as a line right here, which we'll call the equator. Now, rather than trying to remove all this material by scraping, it is much more expedient to simply take a spindle gouge and remove the bulk of this material. I've now installed the Carter Steer tool in my lathe bed, and I've squared this arm up with the ways, and I've turned a 1-inch diameter wooden pointed stick, really, that I can put in place of the tool right here, and this will allow me to sort of slide this along. I need to do fine adjustment here, so I need the fine adjustment tool. And I'm just going to tap that over until that point is right on the equator line. I now have the boring bar in place, and it's just barely touching right in here. We can now start up the lathe and really make our first cut. And to do that, we simply swing this around very slowly and carefully. Make sure everything's locked down tight for this. And you see it's very nicely just cutting off everything that's outside of the sphere. Now I will undo this screw, and I always keep a little back pressure right here. And I'm just going to turn that a little to move that, 10 thousandths maybe, forward. And I'm going to make another light cut like that. Okay, I've now lined my jig up with the equator of our ball, and we're now ready to put the cutting tool in it and finish the process. Of course, I rounded this with a spindle gouge to save time. We're almost done now, and on these final cuts, I found this tool actually works a little better if you go from the tip of the ball, or the south pole here, and come around in this direction to get a little smoother cut this way. And there we go. Our finished sphere. It's now time to sand the ball. And you can sand this in your jam chuck. And you want to use very coarse sandpaper. I'm using 60 grit here. And you just want to randomly turn this in the chuck and keep sanding it with coarse sandpaper. If you use fine sandpaper, you will attack the plank grain faster than you do the end grain, and you'll actually sand it out around. And there we have our completed croquet ball. I'll see you on the lawn for a game.